Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. In today's episode I'm going to give you a 3-month update of my dream reef tank, give you a bit of a tour of my other tanks, and also let you in on something huge that's about to begin. Alright, thanks for joining me on another episode of Parker's Reef, and here we are with my dream reef tank. And probably the first thing I should update you on is that my daughter, and probably also maybe mine, he's very close to my favorite fish, but definitely my daughter's favorite fish, Colin, our standard fox face, is in the display tank. And you can see by how personable this guy is. He always comes up to you, always wants to talk to you. He's been with us for coming up to 6 years now. He went into my existing tank probably, maybe more than 6 years really. Yeah, probably almost 6.5 years now. He went in about 6 months into the existence of my previous display tank. I bought him off another reefer who had had him for 5 years at that stage. So I know he's at least 11 years old. Realistically, he's probably up around the 15+ year old mark. And he's such a cool little dude, and I say little, he's actually a pretty big fish, but he looks so small in this tank. And it's actually something that my wife has pointed out. She said that she didn't really feel like this tank was that much bigger than our old tank until we put Colin in there. And we can see him swimming around in a vast amount of water, and it really hits home how much bigger this tank is. Now, obviously, to get to the point of adding fish, I know we've already got the 2 clownfish in here, which I should also point out have been named as well. We've got the small guy, obviously being the male. His name is Pablo because they are Picasso clownfish, Pablo Picasso. That's the way it goes. And then we racked our brains for anyone else Spanish that we knew. And the only thing we come up with is a Netflix show, a Spanish Netflix show called Elite that my wife and I watch, and we absolutely love. Esta Esposito, I'm going to pronounce that horribly wrong. But she's one of the lead females on that show, and we both absolutely love her. So we've got Pablo and Esther, and now Colin in the display tank. Apart from the fish, we've also got a whole heap of snails in this tank. It's one thing I didn't do a video on because it's kind of hard to get too excited about adding cleanup crew, but it is a vital part of the tank. And I guess probably about maybe about the 4-week mark after putting water in this tank, we just started to really see a little bit of the uglies. I hadn't had the lights on very bright at all. I had them running about 10% because I was scared of bringing on the uglies in the tank. And it was at that point that Dave said, man, you're better off blasting the lights, make that algae come out, and we can deal with it, and then we can move on. So I pumped the lights up to 100%, and sure enough, the rock started to get a little bit of hair algae sort of type stuff on it. Not a lot, to be honest. The sand went brown pretty much in a day, which was a great sign. You've got to get all that out of fresh sand, and at that point we put a heap of snails in there. I've been pulling about 20 to 30 turbo snails out of the idiot-proof tank maybe about 2 times a week. So getting about 50 to 60 snails, turbo snails a week added to this tank, which fair enough, they're little baby turbos. They just disappear into the rockwork. You don't really see them again. But I've also got, I've got about a dozen captive bred troker snails in here. I say captive bred, they've been self-populating in a coral wholesaler system, which means that they are more likely to repopulate in here. Whether they do or not, who knows, but we'll go with that. And last but not least, I'm running 5 Stromba snails in this tank, which those guys are incredible. They cleaned the sand up from being a brown covering to being beautiful crystal white and clean again in like literally a day and a half. They absolutely smashed it. And now the guys are hanging around the back wall because I'm deliberately not cleaning the black wall. I guess it is black, but I'm deliberately not cleaning the back wall so that there is a nice little bit of algae there for them still to feed on, because I don't want to starve them, and you know, they've been doing good things for me. I want to do good things for them. So my back wall is still nice and hairy, and I'll leave that there for the snails at this point in time. Other than that, in the display tank, you may notice I've got a couple corals in there now. There's a couple of just little rescue pieces that you know, I'm not expecting too much from, but my other tanks probably weren't in the condition to save them, so I've got them in here. The only ones of real interest is the gold deshi that I picked up from the super secret coral wholesaler the other day. That one's just in there, just starting to settle in now. I've got this incredible acro up there, which as soon as it came into Deer Park Aquarium, I was eyeing it off. My tank was not ready at that stage for coral, and I watched it sit there for 6 weeks. For some reason, SBS is not all the rage at the moment. It seems like Recordias and some other LPS are. So that SBS colony sat there for 6 weeks before I finally said, Dave, I gotta take it home. Yeah, I cannot see it sit on the shelf any longer. It had actually grown onto the frag, well not the rack, just the rack in Dave's shop. So I've got this beautiful blue and very light green acro in there, and it's just looking beautiful. I'm so happy to see that despite the tank only being 12 weeks wet, that it's holding color. If anything, the color's even intensifying. The polyps are out. It's looking really good, which there's got to be a testament of the bacterial diversity we've got going in this tank. So we've got some good water conditions. Obviously, all the lights are doing their job. We're giving the corals what they need. And all of the flow options I've got in there, despite them being turned right down, are obviously just keeping that water moving nicely. So that's probably all the updates of the display itself. If I open up the hood, I did a video the other day showing how I've mounted my Kessels. They're now on the tank. I haven't actually put the controller on there. I just have them on a manual. So I've set them all to be full blue, about 50% power, and I just have them come on for a couple hours a day just to give a nice bit of shimmer, because I don't care what anybody tells you, no one beats Kessel shimmer. Sure, they can be beaten in other areas, but when it comes to outright shimmer, Kessel just has a look that nothing else can replicate. So obviously 3A360X on this tank wouldn't be enough to sustain much coral at all, but to give a little bit of supplemental shimmer, you bet. My Orphex have had all of the optics removed. I did a video on that if you're interested, to give them maximum spread. That's working a treat. And my Phillips Coral Care, just being Phillips Coral Care, just pumping in the light in all directions. The spread from those lights is just amazing, and it's all working really well. So I can probably close that hood up. If we jump on down into the cabinet now and into the sump, it hasn't been a huge amount of updates there, but I'll open it up for you. You probably noticed when I opened that door, the light now turns on. I've actually, I took the lazy way out and just opted for a Phillips Hue motion sensor rather than wiring up reed switches to the door. This thing is probably the expensive option. The reed switches were probably about $5 each, and I would have needed 3 of them. This was $50, but I literally just had to sit it in there, job done. Other than that, I've got 2 tablets in here. I've got just a spare Android tablet that we got free for something, and an old iPad. I'm going to find some mounting options for these, and I'm going to put a couple of different apps on there. One will run my Mobius application, and the other one will just have the Techo Connect application, just to give me a temperature readout of what the chiller is seeing outside. And not only will they serve as displays, they'll also give me the ability to quickly turn the pumps to feed mode, things like that, just so I can not have to have my phone on me, or if I've got wet hands, I don't have to dig in my pocket and get the phone out. So I'm going to mount those probably in the cabinet, but possibly even up in the hood or around on the corner on my side door there, potentially even in the end cabinet. Who knows? I'm going to work out some mounting options of these, because well, this one will be interesting. I don't think they really make cases for this, and this is a good few-year-old iPad, so I might have to scour eBay or something and find a cheap case which will allow me to build a little bracket to mount this. Next point of interest is I have finally mounted my dosing pump up there. I managed to get that to mount onto the housing for the filter roller from Himali, and it's sitting there looking nice and slick. I've got all the color-coded hoses on it. Just working out what dosing containers I go next, because I've got this nice neat little run along there where I can put 4 dosing containers. Working out whether I go 1 unit which is separated into 4, or whether I go 4 separate ones, whether I color code them to match the Kamoa, whether I go the color of the cabinet and the sump, or who knows. I'm working through it at the moment. If you've got any ideas on dosing containers, be sure to pop it in the comment section down below. I'm entertaining all options at this stage. Moving on over into the sump section of my cabinet, and I have to say, when I first set up the filter roller from Himali, I was a little bit cautious at how fine the mesh was on the filter roller. I really thought that being that fine, I was going to burn through those rolls in like a few days or maybe a week. And I'm happy to say that with it being running with water going through it now for 12 weeks, including adding all of the sand, the rock, running all sorts of muds from aquaforest and stuff in there, and I've gone through maybe a quarter to a third of a roll, which wow, if I can get a year out of a roll, it makes it a very economical option. So big thumbs up to the Marley 200mm filter roller. Next thing I want to touch on is the Skimmer. Skimmer's been running an absolute treat for me, and it's just still super quiet. It's pulling out beautiful gunk, despite the fact that I have it plumbed to the drain, so I don't often get to see the gunk it pulls out. But when I lift the lid up, I can see the dirty foam there, and despite there obviously not being a huge bioload in the tank just yet, it's doing its job really, really nicely. And the little float switch I put in there to automatically shut it off should something go wrong with my drain is a beautiful peace of mind. I do have my old Avast swabby, which I'm yet to fit up to that skimmer. I actually want to get a second arm so that I can basically have the swabby clean both sides at the same time. I'm hoping that will help keep the unit a bit better centered. I did find with the swabby on my previous skimmer that it'd tend to sort of not quite sit perfectly center, and it'd clean one side over the neck and the other side would be left. It'd still clean it, but it'd just leave a bit of a film on there rather than having this beautiful wipe. I come and clean it out. So I'm going to make up a second arm, mount that on the other side, and see if that keeps the pressure even across the two. Alright, I think that's probably it for the Dream Reef tank. Probably the next thing I'll be doing in here is upgrading my heaters. Not that we need them at the moment, we're in summer here in Australia, but I want to just update my heat control. I've got a probably about a 7-year-old STC 1000 on there with a couple of Eheim Jaeger heaters, which are high quality heaters, but they're glass. They're a few years old now. It's just a potential failure point, so I've got an Aqualogic controller, I believe it's Aqualogic, and a couple of Shago titanium heaters to put in there soon, but with all of the heat we've been having lately, it's not necessary just yet. And then after that, I probably will get to the stage where I can actually start growing some macroalgae and put my Kessel Refugium A360X on this tank and actually pull some of the media out of this section, put my Kessel on that custom-made hood of that section, start growing some macroalgae as a nutrient reducer, which will be pretty cool to see because I've never ran an open refugium before, only algae reactors. So really keen to see how well it works and give those all that macro organisms, all those little pods and whatnot, a real nice safe haven to grow and thrive, which will be really cool to see on the tank. All right, that's it for the Dream Reef tank, but let's move on into my fish room where I've got a few more tanks to give you an update on, and then we'll finish on my big news. All right, next up is the idiot-proof reef tank. Wow, that's a mouthful, and it's probably the tank I've had the most questions about over the last couple of months. People want to know if it's still running, how's it going, if I've made any changes, and let's see if we can answer some of those questions. As you can see, the idiot-proof reef tank is still running. How's it going? I'd say okay. It's had a lot of neglect over the last probably 5 months while things have really ramped up with the Dream Reef tank. But it's still here and it's doing what it was always intended to do, and that's to be as forgiving and as simple of a reef tank as possible. Now, unfortunately, some of the really nice pieces I've taken out of this tank to put across in my Dream Reef tank, but all in all, it's still doing really well. And I've got actually, I should say, I've got a few more pieces to take out of it too. I'll probably end up taking the yellow hammer, the gold torch, in fact, the scully, a couple of the chalice, maybe this dragon sulfalia. There's quite a few bits and pieces I will rob from this tank, which is interesting because the concept, well, internally the concept for this tank was always to take it into the office because, you know, I had all these reef tanks at home and none at work in the office, and with the whole COVID-19 situation happening, my workplace is now exploring the possibility of us never going back into the office. So I could be home working for the rest of my working career, which means that I probably don't need to have another reef tank running when I've got my main showpiece out there. So I am at the stages of exploring of shutting this down, and it's been a cool run, but I want to focus my attention where it needs to be. And whilst this tank has been pretty cool, I've just got shinier and prettier things to play with, and I want to make sure I give it all of my time. But all in all, it's doing pretty well. I mean, it's been absolutely hammered with some different lighting mostly. I ran the original Kessel A80 on there for quite some time. Then I tried out the Max Spec Jump LED, which was too much light for this thing. It actually ended up hurting quite a lot of the SBS in the tank. And as soon as I went back to the Kessel A80, despite being significantly weaker, and I mean visibly weaker, the corals started to look a lot better again. And then I went and did something stupid like testing the Phillips coral care over it, which is, again, it light made for about 8 of these tanks. So it's had a fairly tough time, yet the pieces in here are still kicking along quite fine. It's got a little bit of algae on there, which could probably clean up pretty nicely if I gave it the time and effort, which, full disclosure, I totally should, but I wanted to give you guys a warts and all tour. So there it is. The 2 clowns in here are doing fine. I've got a beautiful little red line cleaner shrimp in there too. That dude stayed like so timid. I'm used to cleaner shrimp, like as soon as you put your hand in the tank, come up and crawling up on you and trying to clean under your fingernails and stuff. This dude would run and hide for his life, and he's only now getting to the stage where if I walk into the fish room, he doesn't disappear and make it really hard to see. So step by step, we're getting closer to making that guy as friendly as possible. But well, let's move on over to my big frag tank, or my holding tank, and I'll give you a bit of an update on it. All right, next up is my big frag tank. Well, what used to be my big frag tank is now, well, so the last 6-7 months has been my holding tank for the fish that I want to keep from my main display. And it's been kicking along just fine. It obviously hasn't done any good at keeping coral, because it has had a huge fish load in there and not the most amount of filtration, and in fact it's got no sand. It's got a little bit of rock that I pulled out of the old display tank just to bring some bacterial and biological filtration across, but all in all it's really been a fish holding tank. And the majority of the fish in here, I mean, obviously this is where Colin was sitting from the main tank. He's made his way across in here now, and of course they're going to be all super shy. You can see Prius, my tiger page angel, he's still in there being grumpy as ever, but he really takes pleasure in annoying the hell out of those chromis, which is cool. I've got Harley, my hogfish here. That's the one fish that will not make it into my Dream Reef tank. That guy is an absolute pain. If anyone local wants him, you can have him. He's a cool fish and all, but he just I tried wrasse a couple of times in my previous display tank, and this dude does not like wrasse at all. So as a result, I put up with him. I had him for almost 7 years, and just turned a blind eye on wrasse. But on this new tank, I really want to get into a few wrasse out there. So Harley, the hogfish, will not make it. The chromis, yeah, they may go in at some stage. We'll see. I'm still working through the fish list as to what schooling fish I go. May go something a little bit fancier than the blue-green chromis, but you never know. My pair of flame hawks in this tank, they will absolutely make it into the Dream Reef tank, but just got to pick and choose exactly in what sequence to put them in, because hawks can be a touch aggressive. And last but not least, hiding up here in the corner, very, very timid for a purple tang. Prince, my purple tang, will absolutely be going into the Dream Reef tank. In fact, I'm just working out pretty much all of the other tangs that I want to add with him at the same time. Once I've got all of those fish ready to go, I'm going to be adding all of the, I think it's the Zebra Mosa subspecies of tangs, are all going to go in together. And I'm actually going to look at a gem tang later this week to see whether we can get him started and get him on a bit of a tank transfer process to get him all ready for the Dream Reef tank. And if that goes through, there's just one other tang that I've got to secure, and I can put Prince, my purple tang, who's just come out now. He's still hiding in the shadows, but he's come out of his hole at least. Prince, a gem, and one more tang to go in, plus some of the, I forgot the name of the other species, but the rounder ones, they'll go in there as well. So all in all, I mean, the fish holding system's doing what it needs to do. It's holding my fish. Let's move on to the next tank. Alright, the last tank currently running in my fish room is my original reef tank, the Red Sea Max 130, and this has been done to my soft coral tank, or my frosted rose bubble tip farm, and this is kicking along doing what it's always done. It gets, you can actually just hear getting an automatic water change now. I've currently got 7 litres a day of new salt water going through the system and back out, and it's doing what it does. It gets such neglect. I don't really do anything at all. I gave the glass a clean this morning, a very quick clean at that. My 2 clownfish are still in there, my bicolor blenny's still in there, and my orchid dotty back is still in there. Absolutely loving life. I've got about 15 of the frosted rose bubble tips in there, so if anyone is chasing one, hit me up. I'll be selling those on now, because I find in this tank, once I get over about a dozen frosted rose bubble tips in there, they stop reproducing as quickly. So yeah, if anyone's looking for a good deal on a frosted rose bubble tip, I'll look after you. But Other than that, there's not a huge amount to tell you about the system. It is holding one of the larger pieces of coral from my previous display tank that I did actually want to keep, and that was a bit of a rarity, and that's because it grew from a much smaller piece back in a spot where you couldn't actually see it, and I didn't really discover it in my tank until I tore it down, and that's this beautiful purple and yellow turbinara. It was in the coral holding system or the fish holding system and really started to decline badly. So I pulled it out of there and put it into this system, and it's holding up okay. It's still got a little bit of algae on there, holding a couple of bits up, but you can actually see where it's regrowing, and it kind of looks pretty cool because the regrowth rim is yellow, which really gives it some great contrast. And the polyps up on the higher edge where they're getting most of the light are starting to really protrude. So I'm pretty happy with how this system's going. It's kind of ironic, this system's got the least amount of technology on it and gets the least amount of attention, but it does have many years of stability and just love behind it, I guess. So it's just trucking along doing its thing, but sometimes that's just reefing, hey? And I should point out that there used to be one other system just to my left here, which I just recently shut down. That was my clown Harem tank. That tank, I made the mistake of putting some hermits in there when I first set it up, and as a result, the hermits never let me keep any snails in the tank. And when the clownfish Harem became about adolescent age, I had to pump a lot of food into that tank. A lot of food, a lot of bio waste, not a lot of filtration, and the ability of not having snails led to a fairly ugly tank most of the time. Ironically, it was still the tank that most of our visitors really liked to see because, you know, it had Nemo in it. But I've got something that's going to go into this space, so I had to shut it down, and it's probably also going to lead to the fish holding system and the idiot-proof tank being shut down because I got something pretty cool to show you. So let's go check that out. All right, here it is, just temporarily in our working from home office. That is the Cade Pro Reef 2. This is the 1200 Frag model, and you can see I've got it lit up by 3 Ecotech Radian XR30 Pros using their single light mount. And I'm so super excited to get my hands on this system and really update some of the equipment in my fish room. This looks like such an incredible system, and I'm really excited to be bringing you some full overviews and setup and all of the information you'd want to know about this system in coming videos. But so far it temporarily sits in our home office whilst I get the fish room ready for all the action. All right, guys, there you have it. That's the 12-week or 3-month update of both my Dream Reef tank, but also what's going on in my fish room. And as you can see, the soon-to-be set-up Dream Frag Tank, which I'm super excited about. Now, that system's going to be a little bit different in that my Dream Reef tank here was all very bespoke and custom tank, custom stand, custom cabinetry, going a bit left field with the lights and things like that. The Dream Frag Tank, I want to do a little bit differently. I want to see what we can achieve by using basically off-the-shelf components. So we've gone for the Cade Frag Tank there, we've gone for the Ecotech Radian lights with the Ecotech Radian mounts, trying to see what's possible and how Dream Frag Tank we can achieve without going down too much of the custom paths. So it's going to be a cool little challenge, and I figure I've had such an exciting time and really enjoyed the logistics over the last year of planning and building this system that hopefully I've learned a little bit and can now apply that knowledge and come up with something pretty cool for my frag tank, which hopefully by the time it's up and running, I'll have a whole heap of SBS and some other corals in here as well that I can take frags off and start growing as backups, and also to trade and sell with some of my reefing buddies. So it's pretty exciting times ahead, and it's been pretty exciting times so far. So I guess I'll wrap this video up here. If you've got any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all about any of my current tanks or upcoming tanks, feel free to pop the questions in the comment section down below. I personally reply to each and every question. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps. It helps the YouTube algorithm know that this was a good video and it should be recommended to other reefers, which in turn really helps me out a lot. And finally, if you're yet to subscribe, that's the thing you can do to help me out the most. That is just hitting that little button down in that bottom corner there. It costs you no money at all. It'll take 2 seconds of your time. I personally highly appreciate it. Other than that, guys, I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for following my journey on the Dream Reef tank and all of my other tanks here at Parker's Reef. Stay safe, keep reefing. Bye.